be here because today we're talking about, well, in my opinion, the most important way to be able to advertise, market, scale your business, which is digital advertising. And we're going to basically talk about how you can actually develop a successful strategy for digital advertising. So with us today is Jennifer Shaheen. Now, she's the founder and president of Technology Therapy Group. She's recognized as an expert in planning, implementing, and translating digital marketing and technology. Now, she's a digital transformation expert, user experience enthusiast, and data insights specialist, expertly guiding business owners through the intersection of marketing and technology for the last 20 years. With this unique experience that combines technical prowess, entrepreneurial insight, and marketing acumen, Jennifer's marketing strategy, brand development, and small business operation skills have aided companies in the retail, manufacturing, hospitality, luxury, and travel industries. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Ty. I appreciate it.
I have to tell you, like, what you do is my favorite thing. Like when I refer to it as a CEO, as I've moved, as the company's got bigger, things being taken away from me. And that was the hardest thing to be taken away from me was digital advertising. So are you having a lot of fun right now? A lot of things changing.
A lot of things are changing. It's fun. And like most of your listeners, it gets a little frustrating, right? Because it is changing and it's changing in different ways on different platforms.
Agreed. And we want to dive into all of that. Let's start from the beginning. Digital advertising. When we talk about digital advertising, just so everybody's on the same page, even the people that are just launching new businesses, what are we talking about?
Absolutely. And thank you for doing that, because I think that's a really good point, is that we have to remember that digital advertising means that we're talking about paid, not organic. So you might pay somebody to do your organic, but it is not the same thing. When we talk about digital advertising, we're talking about paid advertising, and we're talking about this in multiple different places. So, it can be on a search engine like Google or Bing. It can be on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Snap. It can also be on LinkedIn. And then we can look at other paid components when we talk about this, like reach through like content marketing areas that are also paid versions of advertising. Platforms you might be familiar with will be something like Outbrain or Taboola.
Interesting. Now, when we talk about these, what are you finding right now, do you think is to be the most effective?
Well, I mean, I think when we talk about it, it really depends on the type of business, right? Because what is effective is stepping back and understanding that, are you looking to grab people at a top of the funnel when they're just exploring and getting to know you, or is it different layers? So the effectiveness from my perspective has to do with what you sell and who your audience is, because each platform has its pros and cons. And I figure we're going to dive into that today.
And I definitely want to. And I want to start with, the importance of digital advertising before we dive in, because I see a lot of people that get stuck in this. I get my business from referrals. And then they stop getting referrals. And it's this unpredictable growth pattern. I found digital advertising as a really reliable way to scale. But what do you think? I mean, with all your expertise and knowledge, what do you really see are the most important reasons you should do paid ad spend? You should do digital advertising.
One of my biggest reasons to have even, so for startups, one of the reasons I always have them do digital advertising, or like them to consider it, is two things. The first is if they're new, they need the reach. But the second goes for not only new, but also existing, is when you're paying for something, you're getting something else besides eyeballs and clicks. You also get data and insights. And that is one of the biggest reasons that we recommend looking at a digital ad buy in some way, shape, or form when you're starting a business, because it can really help you clarify the I don't know in your business.
One of the things you just started with is really knowing your audience when choosing a channel. How do you do that? I mean, a lot of people just don't know how to make a customer avatar. Ours is like 4 pages long for every product we have. But I'm really astonished at how many people just get stuck there. They don't really even know who their audience and customer is. So how does somebody get started if they're not really familiar with their avatar? What are things they should be looking at to define an avatar? And where can they go to kind of start figuring out who their avatar really is?
Yeah, and it's funny you use the word avatar. Obviously, in some marketing channels, we use the word personas. I'm laughing because, of course, we have the movie coming out later this year too. I think we have to step back, and I always say you have to look at things internally first. So, for example, if you have a business and you created a product, usually you created a product around a reason or a solution or a problem you were solving, right? And even if the problem you were solving was for yourself, then what is the persona of your type of client, right? If you sell a product or service, let's say a service, and it's more B2B, it's not any different. We just have to understand the need and who we're focused on. So I always tell people to start internally, like look at themselves and say, what is my brand? Why did I do this? What are we all about? What are we trying to achieve? And as you do that, you really do peel back the layers of, the audience, because just to say, our audience is between the ages of 25 and 35, and they're interested in 5 things, that's not going to get you as much. It might narrow into the platforms, but when we get into the actual advertising part where you have to do brand and messaging, you haven't done the persona part first, and being really clear about who you are and why you connect with that audience, then you're going to have a harder time on the ad side. And you're also not going to see as much success on the ad side.
So when you're developing a strategy for a company, what do you look at? I would think that you'd start with persona first, when of course we call it avatar. So, persona is what it's now growing into, right? So if we look at persona first, and then I would think we try to get what you're describing as a message market match. We're kind of trying to find the message that works best with that persona. I don't know. I mean, what kind of what are the initial steps of developing a strategy for your clients?
So, stepping back and saying, okay, because it's funny, I'm doing this right now with a client, and they sell gems, and so particular audiences are going to appeal to this product in different ways. So, what you really want to do is understand the need and the wants of that individual audience, right? And how you're fulfilling that, and then breaking that down into obviously other things about them. So understanding, age ranges, understanding their catalyst for purchasing, what else are they interested in? So these are going to be all the ways that you start to break down that persona.
When you think that people are choosing digital advertising versus direct mail, TV, radio, there's still a lot of options out there, even organic social, where they're building and working with influencers. Why do you think digital advertising should be prioritized maybe above some of these other options?
I really feel like it's really part of a mix. I think if you understand who you're connecting with and what your budgets look like, because that's, I think, another part here, right, Ty, is that we don't have a bottomless budget. So I do think you have to pick a mix that works with your budget. One of the things that I like about digital advertising specifically is obviously I can control my budgets per platform, and also with Google Ads specifically, you can do things based off of conversion. So you can really drive into the fact that you're trying to pay for an action you want to take. Whereas, let's say with social ads, you can drive that, but it's not quite the same level. Oftentimes you're using social as awareness based, or you're also using it, maybe now they're aware of you more, the remarketing and the closing. So it sometimes ends up being a nice top and bottom of funnel components. When we go back to your original question, I feel like there does always have to be a mix. And the other thing I like is you can learn a lot about how to adjust organic with paid. So if you're seeing certain things resonate on a paid side, then you can start to adjust to organic to know that you've got to those eyeballs faster. And now, because we know organic takes time, and adjust your copy, you can adjust your, phrasing that you want to get more aggressive around, because you're seeing what's resonating and converting on the paid side.
All of which are things I love too. I think one of my favorite things about what you do is that it used to be, and we still do, right? We look at TV, we look at radio. Radio's 10 grand. Like they'll tell you, you can't even get into it, right? You can't even get into TV for less than 20. You can't even get into PR for $20,000, $50,000, direct mail you're spending. And so it takes you a lot of time, and a lot of money to figure any of these things out. Facebook, I need $50. Like reasonably, like that's a little like exaggerated, but with a very little spend, I can get a pretty good idea of what's working and what's not working over the other, enough to dial it in, make adjustments, and then start putting some real money behind what's working. It's just a fraction of the cost and almost near immediate results for me to make adjustments. Then, as you said, that information then helps me go to everywhere else. Once I figure out what works, the message, the avatar, the persona, the audience, all those things, then it makes it easier for me to expand out to those other channels once I know what works.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that one of the things that we have to coach so many businesses to understand is, because of what you just said, right? It's an easier entry. But there are some best practices about that. And one of them is that you do want to be specific in what you're putting together in your campaign. So what I mean by that is, I don't know if you hear this at all, but I always hear this, especially when somebody has an online store, is I can sell everywhere in the country. Well, yes, you can, but a cost per click in New York is different than a cost per click in LA, and a cost per click in, Houston or Austin is going to be different. And so you don't want to put everything into one big bucket. You want to start breaking it out. So one, you can properly reach into those markets and you don't deplete your funds right up front. And so how you set up a digital ad campaign can really impact what you get for results, but you also want to think about it from the perspective of, what do you want to learn?
Yeah, and what you said hit on an important point. One of the things we've realized in the last month and a half is, like, we take our ad spend down to a really niche, almost city level of where our buyers come from. And it cut our ad costs in half. And I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. We spend like $1 million plus for our company on Facebook. And that one thing cuts ad costs in half. So what are some more tactics and strategies that you've had? And that was just for us. I'm not saying that it's going to be typical for everybody else, right? But I'm just saying that the idea that one of these things that you have knowledge-wise and what you do for your clients, you're saving somebody quadruple of what they would pay if they did it on their own. So what are some other effective strategies that you found that really help to get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to digital advertising?
So perfect. Thank you for saying that, Ty, because I think that's an important point, right? Is I want to go back to that for just a second, because that is it is really important, especially if you're if you're a local or you sell anything in a certain local area, like home improvement products, right? We all know that even in the same city, you can have two totally different types of audiences. And we had this happen with a catering company where they were just doing one full city. And I'm like, but that whole city can't afford you. So even going down into the zip code, why most people don't do this oftentimes is because it does take a lot more setup. And I think that's probably like my first tip, is always that the setup is worth it. It's always going to take you more time. And that's going to help not only lower your cost per ad spend, but it's going to improve your conversion cost. And one of those other setup tips is that if you are doing different specific cities, make sure that in those pages, that person sees themselves. So if you're doing, let's say I'm from Rhode Island, so if I'm going to do something Providence, I'm going to make sure that when somebody comes in from that area, they're going to get the feel that we understand what it's like to work with a local business there. But I can also sell my services in other areas. So same thing. People want to know that you get them. And so one of the biggest mistakes most people make is that they use the exact same creative when they're talking to two different geo-targeted audiences. And this would be whether you're running Google ads or Facebook ads, is be sure that you're showing that you understand the person that's looking at the ad. And then when they click through, that's the third tip, is that you're carrying that message there as well, right? Because again, you don't want them all going to the same landing page.
And I can tell you that it's like if we would have had this interview years ago, you would have saved me at this point. I'm estimating about $3.7 million. I mean, really, honestly, it's like the people that are watching, you don't understand the value of what Jennifer's telling you. I went through this the hard way and spent a lot of money to figure out a lot of these lessons that she's saying. And that's very accurate of if the message isn't even congruent between the ad and the landing page, all of a sudden you just do not get click-throughs. You're getting leads there and the leads are not going through. And that messaging per area makes a lot of sense too, because you're not going to talk to a New Yorker the same way you're going to talk to a Texan. Like if you are, then you're going to lose a lot of business you could have got out of that.
Exactly. And I mean, and again, this is sometimes why it's helpful to have someone set up and support you. And that's a big part of like what we do. I mean, we're not just a company that does advertising for clients. We also train you on it. And we want people to know what to do and how to change things. But, you know, that's, I think, really important. And also, if you're working with someone who does this for you, you know, do feel free to challenge them and ask them those questions, because that's usually what they're there to do, is to do the heavy lifting and set up, you know, 20 versions of something so that, you know, when a female over, you know, a certain age, she'll see herself versus a female under a certain age sees herself. I mean, you might have the same market, but if you're talking to, again, going back to our avatars and personas, right? We want to make sure that not only are we doing this from a geo perspective, but we're doing it from a, you know, emotional storytelling perspective.
The other thing I think it's interesting is when we started doing digital advertising, I did it myself. I learned it and then I went and deployed it. And then it worked, right? I got it dialed in, the message, I got it worked. I was like, oh, I'm going to scale this thing. And so then I went like $20 a day to $100 a day. I don't remember what the amount was. And I was like, I can't mess this up. And then Facebook was like, yeah, you can't hold my beer. Let me show you how. And then they just dropped my results, right? I mean, it was just, I'm like, what is happening here? Do you not want me to spend more money? And this kept happening again and again and again, to a point where finally I was like, I abandoned shit, abort. And then I had to hire somebody to come in internal to do what you guys do at a fraction of the cost of bringing somebody in to do it. So what happens there? Like, what's the difficulty of scaling? Because even if you get it to work on your own, scaling it's a beast that's 10x harder than getting it to work, from what I found.
Well, that, and also let's bring up the fact that when did you do that?
Years ago. I mean, this was 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
So in the last, year, 2 years, really, Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and any Pinterest, anywhere you do digital advertising at this point, they're really using the machine learning. So this is changing things a lot. So what Google ads do now is, and we have to set an expectation with every client, that when you're doing digital advertising, you have to understand that the algorithms give you 3 weeks to learn and 3 weeks to apply its learnings. So think about that. That means that you're not going to see true, real growth and opportunity for scale for a minimum of 6 weeks. And that's tough when people, and let's be honest, because I know I do it myself as a small business owner, right? Some of us we procrastinate getting things done. And like one of the things that we're talking about right now with clients is holiday planning, like Q4 planning, because the summer is the best time to leverage the machine to learn and for you to tweak things. So per your, right, you can scale, and then you're not waiting for it to learn more in the fall. And then in the fall, when people are Googling more or, on social media more and doing different things, you've sort of not broken the code, but you've gotten there, you're getting better, and you're just consistently tweaking. And that's actually one of the things that I think people don't understand, is that they think because it's algorithmic. Once you set it, you can forget it, and it's not true. You have to keep going and fixing it, because then the machine learns more and applies its learnings forward. And every time you make a change in your ads, you have to give it time to learn and a time to apply it forward.
Machine learning's really helped a lot with making these successful. And at the same time, in the last couple of years, we've had this shakeup with third-party data, right? Cambridge Analytica, Apple's mad. I don't know what those guys are going back and forth. So then Apple doesn't give them their data. So what have you seen that happen? It seems like Facebook now has way less access to third-party data, which means it's information from other people to be able to target better the market. Have you really seen that that's had an effect over the last few years?
It has had the biggest effect in the last year. What has hurt so many companies is they can no longer look at year-over-year data right now. So think about it. In 2021, Apple changed their operating system and your data is now private. So every one of my businesses who did, and anyone who sold online in 2020, right, you most likely did some type of reach and advertising or something, social media. But if you're looking at your data year over year from 2021 and 2022, in this part of the year, Apple changed the back part of 2021. So your year over year data is awful to look at. So it has actually impacted our analysis on things. Now let's talk about the ad side. Yes, it has actually cut down on levels of personalization, which is one of the things consumers really want. But now they have to opt into getting that personalization. So it's one of those situations where Facebook definitely has. As a matter of fact, Ty, what's really funny is Facebook has literally its own ad campaign, even running on YouTube, that talks about people reaching out to Apple and asking for them to, like, they're trying to let people know that this has been a big deal and it's really hurt small businesses. It has hurt small businesses more because small businesses use the more general and open tools for analytics, whereas larger organizations have more advanced tools for analytics. But still, either way, we're all running into the same issue with the privacy policy that Apple, and remember, Apple is still 50% of our mobile market.
And what are they doing? Well, what do you think Apple's up to? Because I've heard people that think that Apple's going to launch their own ad platform, which I think could be brilliant across Apple devices, because they do house like 50% of that traffic, and they get a lot of data. Like, we think Facebook and Google have a lot of data. Apple has a lot of data on us as well. What do you think? Is Apple really up to something? Do you think? I don't know. You might not know, but I mean, just your best guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't like gotten into that thought process yet. I mean, you're probably right. They're all thinking at 4 layers of chess. You know, I always think about like of that Star Trek episode where you used to watch Picard play chess and it was like 3 level boards. Sorry, I'm a bit of a Star Trek geek, right? But I mean, I don't know if they're using it as a way to give us as consumers opportunities to opt in and even make our own versions of revenue or apply it into the app store. I do see a lot of happening. You know, remember we had the Supreme Court case last year where you know, Apple and Google were being sued because of their app stores, and you know, that's going to escalate, I think, all the way to the Supreme Court. So I do think there's some things on that side that's going to impact us, because if they turn those tools into utilities, it will make a huge difference in what happens.
It can be crazy if you think about it. Imagine if Apple deployed their own ad platform. Like, well, your industry would be like the biggest shakeup. So now, like, you can get started. Yeah. You got to build the solution now, and then the minute they do that, you're like, I knew this was going to happen. I've got the product. So back to platforms. Like, when we talk about Facebook, when we talk about Google, Pinterest, LinkedIn, what are some of your faves? Like, what are you seeing? And I definitely know it's based on avatar. Like, my avatar is not Pinterest. So I don't advertise on Pinterest. It just doesn't, it's not, my audience isn't there, right? My audience isn't on TikTok. So I don't do a lot of, although my audience is getting more on TikTok. So But what are you seeing? Like, what are some of your favorite platforms that you're dealing with?
Well, it really depends. I mean, there's a mix. So when we talk about this, let's open it up a little bit more that we really haven't gotten into. I mean, remember, even on Amazon, if you sell on Amazon, they now have sponsored components, right? I don't know if you've noticed this, but I recently noticed this even on Nordstrom. Like now they're doing sponsored in their own shop. So I'm getting a kick out of seeing the fact that, brands are pushing to get to the top of and just being discovered within applications. So though you as a consumer can't do that on a Nordstrom's, right? You can do it on an Etsy, right? Because if you sell a product and you have a Shopify store and you push that content into other platforms, you can absolutely pay to be seen a little bit more on platforms themselves. So I think, when we talk about B2C and selling products, I would say, I look at those kinds of platforms where the consumer that you really have defined, and that's why I brought up Etsy, because if we think about it, like Etsy is a very defined consumer. That is someone who's specifically looking for, the artisan and crafts person, custom made. Whereas Amazon, we're all looking for a deal, right? Really clearly. But I think one of the areas that gets undervalued is something like a LinkedIn. You and I are both, B2B, right? So when I think about B2B, what I love about LinkedIn is that you can target all the way into the size of the company, the job title of the individual. I mean, now the problem with that platform is it's a lot more expensive, but we talked about radio at the very beginning. I mean, people advertise on very specific, right, business radio shows. You can get right to these people's inboxes on LinkedIn now. And, you don't have to worry about it being spam or it's, in mail. You can be in their feed and very specific to catching people's attention. This is a great way to market conferences and, other business to business services. So it really does depend on the objective of the organization.
Any strategies to lower it on LinkedIn? Because we found that we don't get a better customer, and getting a lead from there is like, it's absurd. It's 10, 15x of what we'd spend on a Facebook or Google.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. We probably haven't tested it in over a year. We keep coming back and trying to test it. But what we have found is that now that Microsoft owns LinkedIn, we found Bing to be like this honey hole. Like a lot of people are in, but Bing doing a lot right now. And we have a lot of success there. So I see the LinkedIn data helping us, but we've just not succeeded on LinkedIn in our least recent attempts because our ad cost is just so high.
Yeah. And I think like any platform, and I'd love to know what that looked like, because it might be the type of, because remember with LinkedIn, just like Facebook, right? You have different ad group types. So one of the reasons why people don't do well with Facebook ads is because they don't understand that you have to create a video ad and a single image ad and a gallery ad. And if you sell products, a collection ad, and you need so many types. So LinkedIn does the same thing is, if you're just doing the single image ad, you may not be seeing this, the quality of the results that you might be looking for. Or you may be thinking, because this is business to business, I have to be this way. And what I mean by that, because I don't know if people are going to see my face, like, my business, maybe that's the thing is you have to change it and feel like you would advertise a little bit more personal. I have noticed a lot in the last, since the pandemic, let's just use the word there, right? That people have been using LinkedIn a lot more like they would have used Facebook. They're sharing, personal milestones on LinkedIn more than they ever did. Because I don't know about you, but I've been on LinkedIn probably since it came out, and I'm just amazed at how much
it's awesome
changed.
And when they came out that new news feed, I showed it to one of my friends that's on Facebook all the time. I said, "Hey, what do you think of my feed?" And they go through and they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "That's my LinkedIn." They're like, "That's your Facebook." I'm like, "That's my LinkedIn." Like, it was so close. So they did that. Well, okay. So as we get ready to wrap up, what are some of the things that you think are happening here in the industry that are happening now that we should keep an eye out for? We talked about machine learning and the impact that has. Anything else that we should be keeping an eye out that you think is going to have a big positive impact on our ability to successfully run digital advertising campaigns?
I do. I think the analytics systems that we're getting on our own side, meaning, putting on your websites, those really are designed to help you better understand the customer journey, no matter who your customer is. So I do have to say that's probably the heaviest lift for most businesses. And I do think it's important that we be spending some time with that and really digging into it, because and I love that you said, we know what our return on investment is, but you'd be surprised how many people don't actually dig in and analyze, that. And now you really do need to look at what we call multi-channel, tagging, right? So we do need to be able to see, per channel, like you might have had awareness start on one channel, but conversion happened on a different one. And unfortunately, we only give credit to the end channel and we can't. So we really do need to look at multi-channel attribution. That was the word I was trying to think of.
I love it. I love it. And it's funny to say, because it makes me think when we started it was rudimentary. It was an Excel log. Like on Facebook, we were literally tracking our results on an Excel log because there just weren't those ways to see conversions of people that actually bought that became leads. It was really interesting. We just scratched the surface here. I mean, you gave us some basic high level stuff, but there's a lot more we could dive into to successfully run digital advertising campaigns. So where can everybody that's watching and listening go to learn more?
So you can just stop by technologytherapy.com or feel free to connect with us on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Jennifer Shaheen. You can find me pretty easily, but best place to go. And by the way, we do actually have a free open webinar that we did on ad compliance, because though we didn't talk about it today, there are definitely some no-nos in how you do your ads, everybody. And they can, if you're not set up right, get yourselves disavowed on some platforms, and Google did a 3-strike rule. And so there's lots more to learn, Ty.
Yeah, we don't want to get disavowed. I saw Tom Cruise that happened to him in Mission Impossible. It did not end well. Right? So listen, everybody, hey, Jennifer, thanks for coming on with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So listen, you need to be doing this. I don't even understand how small business owners are not doing digital advertising. You have to be doing this. It's so cost effective and such an easy way, not easy, but probably one of the easiest advertising ways to be able to really dial in and grow and scale your business and do it in a reliable way. So this is something you really need to learn more about, but we just scratched the surface. So what you should do is go to technologytherapy.com. There's a lot of stuff here. First of all, the website's awesome. I mean, you got to look at this because this gives you a good example of the type of website quality you should be building for your business. But you also can access mentoring here, trainings here, freebies here. There's so much information available that you can get right here at technologytherapy.com. So make sure you visit technologytherapy.com, get yourself educated, and then reach out to Jennifer and her team to talk more about developing an actual strategy that works to be able to get you started and grow and scale your business. So make sure you visit technologytherapy.com.